I'm 32 male, and honestly, I thought my life was fairly straightforward. I worked hard, saved diligently, and planned for a stable future. My parents weren't wealthy, but they had enough to ensure my younger sister and I were taken care of growing up. Things shifted after my dad passed a couple of years ago. His passing was hard enough, but what came after nearly broke me. The storm started about 6 months ago when the details of my inheritance were finalized. Dad left me his half of the family business, a small manufacturing company he built from the ground up, along with a modest sum of money. My sister, who's 28, received a similar amount, and my mom retained the house and a smaller share in the business. It seemed fair. We'd all discussed Dad's wishes when he was alive, and no one had voiced any objections. Enter my older brother. Let's call him JJ, is 35, and has always leaned on the "I'm the eldest, I deserve more" mindset. While I worked to get my business degree and build a solid career, Jay floated between jobs and blew through any money he earned. My parents bailed him out more times than I could count, but it was never enough for him. He'd always come back with his hand out, promising this time would be different. Spoiler, it never was. It started with a casual conversation. Jay came over one evening, uninvited, but I didn't think much of it. After some small talk, he dropped the bomb. "You know, as the eldest, it makes sense that I should take Dad's share of the business," he said, leaning back on my couch like it was a done deal. I blinked at him, unsure if I'd heard right. "What are you talking about? Dad left that to me. It was in his will." Jay shrugged. "Yeah, but you don't need it. You got your job and savings." "I'm struggling, man. Dad would have wanted me to have it." I was stunned. "No, Dad explicitly said he wanted me to have it. You were there when we discussed this. What part of 'it's in the will' don't you understand?" His face darkened, and he leaned forward. "I'm your brother. Family comes first, right? You can't seriously be okay with watching me drown while you hoard everything." That was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Jay escalated. He showed up at my work to talk during lunch breaks, sent long-winded texts about how I was betraying the family, and even tried turning my mom against me. He played the victim card, saying I was selfish and didn't care about him. Mom, bless her heart, tried to stay neutral, but Jay's constant whining wore her down. One night, he showed up at my house drunk, banging on the door and yelling. When I let him in, he started ranting about how I had stolen his birthright. He even claimed I had manipulated Dad into giving me the business. I told him to leave, and when he refused, I called the police. That earned me a slew of angry texts the next day about how I was tearing the family apart. Then came the dirtiest trick yet. Jay forged documents claiming Dad had intended to leave the business to him. He filed a lawsuit, hoping to overturn the will. I was floored when I got served. Not only was this an outrageous lie, but it showed just how far he was willing to go. I hired a lawyer immediately, a no-nonsense woman who didn't sugarcoat things. "This kind of case is more common than you'd think," she said, "but the burden of proof is on him. If the will was properly executed, he's going to have a hard time." Still, the process was exhausting. Court dates, depositions, and endless paperwork drained my energy. Jay wasn't subtle about his tactics either. He spread rumors among family and friends, painting me as the greedy little brother hoarding what wasn't mine. A few relatives even called me, urging me to just give him what he wants to keep the peace. I refused. The turning point came during a deposition when my lawyer presented the forged documents. She had hired a forensic expert to analyze them, and it didn't take long to prove they were fake. Jay's face turned red as the expert explained the discrepancies. It was a small victory, but I knew the fight wasn't over. Behind the scenes, I started gathering evidence of Jay's financial recklessness. Bank records, past debts, even emails where he begged Dad for money. It all painted a clear picture of someone who couldn't be trusted with a business. I also discovered that he had lied about being unemployed. He was working under the table for a friend, earning just enough to get by while claiming he was struggling. But the real bombshell came when I dug deeper into the company's records. Jay had secretly been meeting with one of our competitors, offering to sell them Dad's business if he won the lawsuit. It was disgusting. He didn't care about preserving Dad's legacy. He just wanted a quick payday. When the court date finally arrived, I was ready. My lawyer presented everything. the forgery, Jay's financial history, and the shady meetings with our competitor. Jay's lawyer tried to spin it, claiming he was desperate and misunderstood, but it was clear to everyone in the room what his intentions were. The judge didn't mince words. He not only ruled in my favor, but also referred Jay for potential criminal charges for the forgery. As we left the courtroom, Jay tried to confront me, but I walked past him without a word. He yelled something about me being a traitor, but I didn't care. For once, I felt free. After the dust settled, I decided to take things one step further. I reached out to the competitor Jay had been dealing with and informed them of the lawsuit's outcome. They were furious and cut ties with him immediately. Without their support, Jay's reputation in the industry was ruined. I also made sure the rest of the family knew the full story. I shared court documents and evidence, leaving no room for doubt about who was in the wrong. Some relatives apologized for doubting me, while others distanced themselves from Jay entirely. As for Jay, he disappeared for a while. Last I heard, he was working odd jobs and couch surfing with friends. I don't feel bad for him. He made his bed, and now he has to lie in it. Looking back, I'm proud I stood my ground. Jay's entitlement and manipulation could have destroyed everything Dad worked for, but I refused to let that happen. The business is thriving, and I'm doing my best to honor Dad's legacy. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. After the court case ended, I thought the drama would settle, but Jay wasn't done yet. A few months later, I started hearing whispers that Jay was spreading lies about me again, this time to people in the local business community. He claimed I had only won the lawsuit by manipulating the courts and using Dad's money to bribe people. It was ridiculous, but it showed just how desperate he'd become. One night, I got a call from a former colleague who said Jay had been approaching investors and claiming he was starting his own competing company. He'd even named it something similar to Dad's business, hoping to confuse our clients. I was furious. It was one thing to come after me personally, but now he was messing with Dad's legacy again. I decided it was time to take decisive action. I hired a private investigator to dig into Jay's activities. If he wanted to play dirty, I was ready to beat him at his own game. Over the next few weeks, the investigator uncovered a treasure trove of dirt, unpaid loans, shady business dealings, and even evidence that Jay had tried to scam another family member out of money years ago. Armed with this information, I made a bold move. I filed a defamation lawsuit against Jay for the lies he was spreading about me and the business. My lawyer explained that while these cases can be tough to win, we had a strong shot given the evidence of his malicious intent. I wasn't doing this just to clear my name. I wanted to send a message that his behavior wouldn't be tolerated. When Jay was served with the papers, he lost it. He started bombarding me with texts and calls, alternating between begging me to drop the case and threatening to ruin me. I ignored him, but I saved every message as evidence. The legal process was grueling, but I stayed focused. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting everything Dad had worked for. During the trial, my lawyer presented the evidence we'd gathered, including Jay's recent attempts to confuse clients with his knockoff company. We also brought in witnesses, former friends and colleagues who testified about Jay's history of deceit. Watching Jay squirm on the stand was both satisfying and sad. He tried to play the victim, but his lies unraveled under cross-examination. The verdict was another victory. The court ruled in my favor, ordering Jay to pay damages and issue a public retraction. But the real blow came when I decided to go public with the story. I gave an interview to a local newspaper, sharing the full history of what Jay had done and how I'd fought to protect the family business. The article went viral, and Jay's reputation was completely destroyed. To add insult to injury, I also bought the domain name Jay had been using for his fake company and redirected it to our official business website. It was a petty move, but after everything he'd done, I felt it was deserved. Jay's life spiraled downhill from there. Unable to find work in the industry, he moved to another state and tried to start over. I heard through the grapevine that he was struggling to stay afloat, but I didn't reach out. I had no interest in rebuilding a relationship with someone who had shown me such betrayal. As for me, things finally started to settle. The business continued to grow, and I used part of my inheritance to create a scholarship fund in Dad's name, honoring his belief in hard work and education. It felt like the right way to turn a painful chapter into something positive. If you stuck around this long, you're a real one. Hit subscribe to hear more about life's chaotic curveballs. Who knows? Maybe next time it'll be my sister causing trouble. Just kidding. I think